Okay, folks, I've started the recording, so as people join, they'll come online. So don't say anything nasty. If there's anybody out there that is interested in an Azure group in Memphis, I could see if I could get get in touch with the guy who ran it before. See, if there's somebody out there that might want to start one. I'd love to see him start one. So just let me know, okay?
Spoiler alert, we're actually working on trying to revive it yet again.
But, okay, great.
Okay. If you're willing to offer advice and assistance, I will not turn it down.
I'd be happy to help. Anything I can do to help, I will.
I've already got my fingerprints on 2 user groups, so.
Yeah, I actually belong to about 4 Azure groups, Atlanta and a bunch of others that, I don't go to every meeting, but I go to the meetings when they interest me.
Well, no, I'm talking, I actually help run right now 2 user groups in Memphis.
Oh,
actually.
okay.
Yeah, right. So it's
which groups are they?
Python and .NET.
Oh, okay, sure.
So I'm the only one doing Python right now, and we got several of us doing .NET. So,
are you a member of the Nashville .NET group?
I've been there several times. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. I love to find an excuse to come to Nashville. I take every excuse I can to come to Nashville. Yeah.
I'm only going to give them another couple of minutes and then we'll start because we're recording this. So anybody who's late can pick it up afterwards. And for those who are listening to the recording, I apologize for the delay, but I didn't want to miss anything. So you can fast forward over that part. All right, I'm gonna get started. Let's start. Welcome to the meeting, this month's meeting. As I was telling the folks who joined early, we may be meeting in person next month. We've got our fingers crossed. If so, we'll do a hybrid meeting. We'll do in person and recorded. So for those people who are out of the area who attend, they'll have coverage. So tonight we're going to talk about the group very briefly. I've only got a few slides, by the way, then we'll turn things over to the presenter. The mission of the group, the history, the meetings we have, board of directors, who sponsors the group, and sponsorship opportunities, the YouTube channel, which we're using to record the meeting now, and we'll turn it over to tonight's presenters. We're everything to do with Microsoft Azure, both development, infrastructure, management, governance, you name it. We cover the gamut, and we have people attending from all levels, from CTOs down to developers and system administrators. We're founded in 2013 with 4 members. I was wrong before, I said 3. There were 4 members. We have over like 2,100 plus registered members already. And it's been growing fast. We can still use some more members, so tell your friends about us, okay? And your coworkers. Currently, we're meeting only virtually. We meet every 3rd Thursday with Zoom. We start at 6, hopefully, if people show up in time. And I do this quick overview of the group, and then we turn things over to the main presenters. Normally, we met at Microsoft up in Nashville. There's a possibility we may start meeting at Vaco if Microsoft is not open for meetings. Because right now, the Microsoft office in Nashville is not hosting any group meetings. Also, let us know if there's topics that you want us to cover in future meetings. We're open to topics. We're also open to people who'd like to present at future meetings. This is our board of directors. It's myself. I'm the founder and president. I'm no longer with CTG. I should have changed that slide. I'm currently between jobs. I was doing Azure architecture for them. Roger Dahlman's the co-founder and vice president, and he works for Deloitte. He's an enterprise architect. Tim Warner is the board member, and for those of you who joined late, Tim is a Microsoft Azure MVP and does a lot of the courses that are on Pluralsight and writes books. Tim, a couple of weeks ago, joined Microsoft. So now Jim is a blue badger at Microsoft. Kayla Elred is a board member who deals with the universities and colleges in the area, recruiting students into the group. And Matthew Puckett from Microsoft is a global national cloud solution architect. He's been supporting the group from the very beginning, back in 2013, 2014, actually, he joined. And Jack Hagler is our permanent refreshment sponsor. Now, don't look for refreshments tonight because we can only have refreshments when we meet in person. So, but when we do, he's our refreshment sponsor. That's Vaco. And because they couldn't do that, what they decided to do was pay for our Zoom subscription. So that's how we're able to, we're able to present this program to you on Zoom. Okay. Again, sponsors are Microsoft, and Microsoft also supports us to the extent of paying our meetup dues. For many years, I used to pay for meetup out of my own pocket, and now Microsoft is covering those costs. So that's kind of nice. Vaco for our Zoom subscription. And we're also sponsored by the Greater Nashville Technology Council. In fact, they have a committee of all the user group leaders in Nashville, and I'm the chairman of that committee. I got appointed or elected, whatever happened. I don't know how I got stuck with it, but that I'm that, okay? Again, if you have a company and the company wants to sponsor a meeting, we've got sponsorship opportunities. We can raffle things off if people have stuff that they want to raffle off. Roger Dahlman handles that for us. He's the vice president. So if anybody out there does have a company that wants to take advantage of this, just let them know. Like I say, we're also interested in presenters for future meetings. Any Azure related topic is fair game. This is a quick snapshot of our YouTube channel. So you can see we have a lot out there. We must have about 30 videos recorded out there. And with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to our presenter, and Josh McVay is going to start. Josh, why don't you introduce yourself, and I'll mute myself.
Sure. There we go. All right, how we looking?
Good. You want me to jump in, Josh?
Yeah, I'll let you lead it off.
Yes, we're going to dive into containers and scale sets today. Josh is going to be doing most of the demos. He is an amazing cloud engineer. He's been in the industry for a long time. He's one of those rare individuals that is amazing to work with. That's super collaborative and just really smart. And he says that he's not, and that's how you can tell he actually knows what he's doing, right? That's usually how it works. We both work for a company called End Contracts, which is a GRC company. And I'm the Chief Information Security Officer over there. I started in technology fixing validation printers and kind of worked my way up. And then now I just attend a lot of meetings. So I try and get involved in as much technical as I can because it's definitely one of my passions. Just quick plug, something that a bunch of us that teach in our spare time created. During the pandemic, there was a lot of people that lost their jobs and decided they wanted to transition into IT. And we found out that a lot of them just didn't know how to do it, and they went back to school and they're having a really tough time. So we just couldn't help all the people that needed help. So we started a space to help people. And really it's plugging in people that are professionals or who have worked in IT in some way or fashion that want to give back and help mentor some of those beginners in IT. So if you're interested in doing that, we could definitely use the help. We ask people to just spend 30 minutes every 2 weeks just to meet with the people. We handle all the hard conversations if it doesn't work out. But just go to helloworldtech.org and there's a sign up link there. So Azure VM scale sets. So what's the difference between Azure VM scale sets and just standard virtual machines is it gives you the ability to create a group of load balanced virtual machines that can automatically scale depending upon what variables you give it. So if you want it to specify memory or CPU or a time of day, it can automatically create VMs off of an image that you have created, a golden image, and then also scale down those virtual machines as needed. What's nice about that is it takes away a lot of that horizontal scaling that we typically have to do manually. And it also kind of removes the need to have to do any type of vertical scaling during the day. It is designed for stateless applications. Containers are similar in that they are designed for stateless applications, meaning that if you have data for the application, it's stored outside of the server. So it's applications that can just spin up and they can know about each other and interact with the database and not have to store any data locally that we would want to retain for customer reasons or whatever else. But containers are smaller. They allow us to, and most of you probably know this, so I won't harp on it for too long, but it really allows us to quickly speed up and deploy applications in small sets. Some containers can take less than a gig or two of space. They're very quick and easy to spin up, and they work very similar with the orchestration of scale sets in that you can define certain variables such as memory, CPU, time of day, and have those applications auto scale up and scale down as needed. So Azure has a couple of container options that you can use. And they only have one option for scale sets. It's just called Azure Scale Sets. So we're going to talk about real quickly the different container hosting options. And these constantly change and expand. When we started digging into containers, there was pretty much just ACI and AKS. And Azure Container Ops was out, but in preview mode. I'm not sure if it came out of preview mode. I think it did. But Azure is constantly building new ways to host small solutions. So there may be more options. We put this together a month ago. And as we know, Azure changes stuff daily. As Will said before, or Bill Zach said, you can't keep up with both Azure and AWS. It'd be a full-time job just keeping up with every change both of them are making. It's incredible. But Azure Container Instances is just very slim, easy, and basic. And it's really easy to just spin up a container or multiple containers and host those containers. But there is some functionality that you lose with simplicity, such as orchestration. So if you want to do any type of orchestration with like container instances, you have to build a logic app, and there's plenty of scripts out there, but you have to build something on top of it in most cases. It does have some basic orchestration. Azure Container Apps was kind of the, in my opinion, the upgrade to container instances. They added a lot of orchestration into container apps. They added additional functionality, but it's still relatively lightweight. And it also gives you the ability to auto add it to an app gateway if you're using any of those. And then you have full-blown Azure Kubernetes service, and that's Azure, it's Kubernetes, and it's hosted by Azure. We haven't dug into it a lot, but with all the people that we've talked to as we went on this journey, it really can turn into a full-time job. So unless you have somebody that's willing to manage it day in and day out, that may not be the best option, but it does give you the most options from a fine-tuned or robust orchestration. So with those three options, the biggest difference is how many features it has. And with more features is more management. With more management or more features, obviously you're gonna have more orchestration. But if you're just looking for simplistic hosting, you can start with Azure Container Instances.
Yeah, and so some of, some of those decision points when we were looking at moving into it was, we wanted to start using containers, and we saw some of the benefits of it. So when a use case came through, these were some of the things that we were looking at. Containers are designed for long running agnostic workloads, whereas like your web apps, of course, are going to be more HTTP centric. And when we say long running, that is as opposed to something like an Azure function, which we're not really going to talk about other than right now. But those are more short running event driven workloads. And then, of course, when we're talking about scale sets, we get the VM plus all these bells and whistles, right? So some of the things with these ACI limitations, 4 cores, 16 gigs of memory, 15 gig image size, which I'll show you here in just a minute. I'm a little bit above that in the actual VM I'm running. But I think they're talking about the actual base image and not necessarily all the layers you have. No scaling, no SSL termination, no load balancing either. So these are good for maybe internal workloads, but you're not going to see a lot of this stuff probably customer facing. And then there are some limitations when you're talking about scale sets. I don't know if I'll ever run into them, but you get the same VM sizes as just a regular VM. You're limited to 1,000 platform images or 600 custom images. And then talking about our journey, and I don't have real cool animations to make all this stuff slide in, so you just get to digest the pictures as I go through it. But we started this journey to use a Azure container instance, and of course I'm trying to get this thing to run, and it's just not, it's dying. Come to find out, it's just running out of memory. So it loads a tremendous amount of data into memory, and as you can see, the process is just dying. So natively, if you don't have some other process keeping the container alive, if that is the process that the container is looking at, that actually shuts down your container as well. So from there, the use case was, well, this needs to go into a typical VM, but we want to have some scaling capabilities. And so this is when we'll switch over to some demo. Let's go the other way. So here's an already running container instance. Most of your functionality that you've got here, of course, a lot more is exposed through command line, Azure command line, or PowerShell. But for the simplicity of the talk, we're just going to do most of this through the UI, through the portal. But you can see you don't have a lot of options, right? You've just got your properties, and there's no scaling, no extra functionality, right? And then of course we could execute this. Apologies. Here we can see about how big the actual overlay that's being used is. You can see that we're just over that 15 gig mark. Hopefully it's large enough for y'all to see. But so that 15 gigs is probably referenced to the actual image, not the actual overlay of the system. But that's about it.
What does that mean, Josh? Like, what's an overlay?
So images can work in layers, and I believe so. The very bottom thing that you're starting with would be the image. And then, so I've added layers because this comes from an Ubuntu, just a stock image from the marketplace.
Okay.
And then I believe the layers that I add on top of that is where you see some of this storage capacity increase.
Okay.
So limit may or may not have been exceeded, not sure. It is documented 15 gigs though, so it was an interesting finding. So really not a whole lot to see in this perspective. We can look at the actual overview, stop, restart, not a whole lot going on here. I don't have the application actually running because it would just crash. So we can see it's not usually using up that much memory at the moment either. So, you know, the evolution of that was to take it into a scale set. And if I can get to my tab. So if we're looking at the scale set, we already, just by looking at the portal, see that we've got a whole lot of other options available to us. So you've got your typical VM options that you would see plus some. So some of the things, of course, scaling, right, is the main thing. It's in the name. We have here in this particular set, we've got 2 going up to a maximum of 4. We always want it to stay at 2, or start with 2 and go as a minimum of 2. And then, so this will base off of CPU. This is the stock. When you build a scale set, this is just the defaults that come with Azure. So over 75%, it's going to scale up. Below, it'll end up scaling back down. And you can get into the granular scale in policy. I haven't played with predictive charts, but it's just like it sounds. It's going to scale based on predictive technology, you know, that Microsoft has based on all the logs they're collecting on the stuff we're running. Run history, some JSON, notifications, and then your basic diagnostic settings that you would get on your typical Azure resources. One of the neat things.
But John, like the first step, I guess, is you would build a scale set, but really that's just building like the set of machines and the variables that you want to use, right? And then from there, you would image a machine and create an image based on that. Is that how you would start?
Yes, so they're all going to start from an image, and those images can be pulled from the marketplace. You can create image galleries within your tenant to hold those.
Okay. So you're at the point now where.
Yeah, we've built it. Yeah.
We created the scale set. We took a VM. We took an image of that VM and then set it as an image and scaled it.
Correct. And of course, aside from scaling, we have things like health and repair, which is pretty neat. We have this particular scale set sitting behind a load balancer. So there is an actual, we can utilize that as a health monitor. So we have some criteria set up in here, looking at a particular port for connectivity. And then we've got automatic repairs. And basically what we can do is just, we see our instances, which we have 2 of, are running. We can come in here and kill this process. I think that's the one we want. Is it gone? Is it gone? Let's see how quickly Azure detects it. It's typically pretty quick with the health monitor. It sometimes depends on where you catch it in whatever polling duration they have set up on that end. But already our health state has detected that it's unhealthy. There are some grace periods built in by default. I wanted to be real aggressive with it and just have it go nuts. And I think the quickest I could get it to was about 5 minutes. So we won't necessarily sit here that whole time. But eventually what we're going to see is we're going to see one of these just start to create another one here pretty quickly. These images are pretty large. So they take a little bit of time to spin up. Some of our other options in here as far as scale sets go are the upgrade policies. Not a whole lot of options in here. Automatic, manual, and rolling. Those are pretty self-explanatory. Rolling, you can get a little bit more granular. And this of course would be large scale sets if you want to roll out phased rollouts of an application or something to that extent. And we're still waiting for a health repair to kick off. But that is most of what I wanted to demo.
I know that we left it open because we knew that a bunch of people might have different questions on, like, how do we create a container, or how do we get the container into the registry? How do we get that container deployed from the registry? And we wanted to open that up for everybody to be able to ask questions, and we could kind of dive into some of that stuff on the fly. So for anybody that's in the meeting right now, do you have any questions or any pieces of information that we can help fill in for you to help you be more successful with using some of these technologies?
I think for me, the biggest question was, so you all talked about that you had a journey that you started out with container instances and you went to scale sets. What was the problem you were trying to solve, and kind of the applications you were running, and where were the problems that, and how did you end up kind of here instead of, say, like a Kubernetes pod or something like that?
Oh, that's a good question. So like we were working with a third-party software that we were trying to host, and the software is called Smarty Streets. And what it does is it gives the application, some of our other applications, the ability to send information, geocoder information, and get that information back from the application. So a lot of their documentation had how to build the server, but it also had some of the documentation around containers. So we figured, why not just build it in a container? It's a stateless application, and let's just spin them up as needed. We could spin up to 4 instances based upon our licenses. And at night, when we don't have a lot of traffic, we can scale down to 1. So Josh went down that avenue of building the VM. And as he installed a lot of the modules, the extra modules that we built onto it to increase speed and cache and all types of stuff, we ended up exceeding the 16 gig limits. So
we were closer to around 20, I think.
Yeah. So it just started failing. And it was definitely a cool experience. We learned a lot in the process. But we decided that we had to build VMs, and we had to make the decision: do we want to build VMs, build 4 of them, and then auto scale them up and down as we need them, or do we just build it in a scale set? And we have another application that we have built within a scale set. We figured, why not set this up the same way? So Josh took those same instructions and those same steps and built an image, and now auto scales that image. Yeah.
Yeah, so every 90 days, the data in the image gets stale. So every 90 days is really all we have to do. It's low maintenance. It's a basic Linux box, so it doesn't have a lot of, there's just not a lot of stuff running on it to worry about, the housekeeping with. It's segregated from the rest of the network. It just talks to internal applications. So trying to keep it simple. Something that we probably need to do is, instead of refreshing the data in there, is to just link it to a storage account and just refresh the data that way. And then that way they can just, I don't think it's called a symlink, but basically link a local directory to that storage account with that geocoder data. That way we just have to refresh that storage account every 90 days, as opposed to actually rebuilding the VM. We would only have to do, or the image, we would only have to do that. I think their API expires maybe once a year. So yeah, trying to avoid extra work where we can. And yeah, we've on the screen here, we've actually got, we see the old unhealthy instances getting deleted, the new ones being created. It's up and running now. It's in an unhealthy state because it's still waiting for the application to actually launch.
So quick question. So you mentioned you got a load balancer in front of this. Does the skill set come with a load balancer, or you just have a standard load balancer in front of it? And if so, which load balancer solution from Azure are you using?
Yes, so it's just a regular load balancer. We're not using an application gateway because we don't have to worry about that layer.
So
And yeah,
it's all internal communication. So
Mhm.
originally we do leverage application gateways at all of our edge. But what we noticed, I mean, this application is heavily reliant upon speed. We get thousands and thousands of requests for those geocoding. So rather than inspecting all the requests that already go through a front-end application and go through that app gateway, why inspect it again? So
Yeah.
we originally set it up with the app gateway and instead ripped it down and put
And
a load
this-
balancer
and
in.
this is actually evolved, I think, to using the Azure API management.
Okay.
So it comes in, another one of our colleagues is real heavy in the API world, has it going through there, and then it comes in. So I'm not as familiar with that part, maybe for a future talk.
But something to keep in mind though with the skill sets and load balancing. So if you've used the Azure load balancer, the application gateway, which I'm sure you have, you add the IP addresses of the devices to the pool, and that's how you determine, right? So it's not based upon name. The challenge with that is, and this is why Microsoft designed it a different way. If you scale down a machine, something actually has to be able to rip that IP out of the application gateway, actually drop it out, right? So in the application gateway, instead of the pool having an IP address, you can actually select scale set and actually select the name of the scale set.
Mhm.
What it'll do is it'll route the request directly to the scale set, and the scale set will decide which machines to actually route it to or what machines are actually in there. And that's one of the challenges that we had with Azure container instances, that very basic level of container hosting, is that you don't have that option with the application gateway. So as you scale up and scale down, something has to reach out and drop the IPs out of the application gateway. And so far, the only thing that we found that could do that was building a logic app that would check the health of the containers and see if there's one that gets spun up or see one that drops out, connect to the application gateway, do a quick command to drop it out and drop it back in.
Rube Goldberg machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was actually going to be my next question is, everything, because, I don't do a ton with load balancers, but I was curious how you pointed a load balancer at this and got the IPs. But obviously, if you can point it straight at this scale set, that answers that question.
Yeah, and something else about the scale set versus, so the application gateway where load balancer will check the health of the machine based upon whatever variables you give it, right? So it'll check the IP and see if it's healthy. When you set up a scale set, it passes that responsibility off to the scale set. So the app gateway will pass that. In the scale set, though, it has a set of variables to define whether a machine is in the scale set or not, or if it's healthy. So basically just handing everything off to the scale set where you can define what those health variables are.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're happy to dive into anything or give a demo on something else if you're okay with us doing some stuff on the fly and messing up. I still believe that's one of the best way to learn. Usually if I get like a piece of furniture, I don't read the manual because like, why, right? I think that's part of being a guy. So I usually just dive into stuff and then I read the manual once I can't figure it out.
We can have fireworks go off now. It's finally loaded.
There we go.
So, and of course, in our production environment, we're licensed for 4 of these guys. We during the day we'll let it spin up, but at night we actually take it down to 2. We don't take it down to one because we want to have some high availability there. We don't expect a lot of our customers are working at night, but we save a lot of costs that way, because these are, and they're not small VMs. They're not huge, but they're not cheap either. So yeah, do that to conserve costs. Yeah, I think that's all I got.
Yeah, so we'll hang out here. Feel free to ask any questions.
Right, and if you, it's a small group, so if you want to unmute yourself and ask your questions, go ahead. Okay,
Yeah, we promise we won't bite. Or if you have something that like we didn't touch on, or something that you know that we don't, and there's a lot we don't know. Like we'd love to hear about if you guys have some experiences with this, or some gotchas that you've run into.
Yeah, I think a lot of our stack is, that every company's at different levels of maturity, and then as your company grows and then potentially acquires company, right? You don't always get to have that utopia of infrastructure that you want, and sometimes you can't jump straight from legacy on-prem servers into containers, right? The applications weren't architected to run like that. So it's kind of neat going on this journey. Most of my experience is with on-prem, private cloud, Windows admin, storage, all that stuff. So this has been a really cool journey for me these past few years, leveraging some of these technologies, mostly Azure. But yeah, it's real neat. There's some neat communities around it, including this Azure group, where you can go and find a lot of free resources and people chatting about it. And yeah, we're part of that community. So if you got anything you'd like to chat about, our LinkedIn is there. You can sign up at helloworldtech.org, and that'll get you a link, I think, to the Discord where lots of us hang out and chat. That's all I got.
I got a question for the audience. How many of you are actually working with containers now in your development efforts, as opposed to just writing monolithic programs? I'd be interested to find out.
My position's a little different, so I don't do either.
Yeah, so I built some containers at my last job, Python containers that ran just app services. Nothing fancy.
What would
No
you say
AKS.
your largest one was, and just like overall?
It was still in development, so I can't. We didn't have real world usage, and I left before they actually launched the product, so I don't know.
Gotcha. Yeah, I usually start with the engine and the wheels, and I'll let everybody else bolt their stuff on later.
I mean, I guess that's what I'm curious about this, because obviously AKS is kind of that bigger solution that
Mhm.
most places are going, and it sounds like your all's method is a slightly different solution, because obviously AKS is an actual container, whereas you're talking about an actual VM, and there's a little bit of difference there
Mhm.
in terms of sizing, in terms of what you're actually doing with it, and most places are kind of more in that I can solve every problem with a container, seems to be the attitude a lot of places are taking.
Yeah, AKS is more of a managed solution. ACI seems to be very good for firing up either an additional container as part of AKS, or just something that doesn't have to have a lot of orchestration and structure.
Right.
And I'm curious now too, obviously Josh said he wasn't going to talk about function apps, but now that function apps have a larger size and have a larger runtime, will that then, will that compete against some of the container workloads? I'll be curious.
Yeah, I think there's still going to be that differentiation between long running workloads and more short-term event driven workloads. That's the buzzwords I keep seeing anytime I'm reading about it, because I've been still trying to understand the differences between all the different container or serverless offerings, I think is the proper
Yeah.
term. So yeah, those serverless offerings that are out there.
Yeah, it's interesting you said Smarty Streets, because I've actually used it, and I find it interesting that that's kind of your use case, and it sounds like you all are kind of doing that at a batch, not an event driven, because that would be my question, like why couldn't you event driven have a lookup every single time for every single individual address that comes in and fire that off as kind of a single event driven action?
I like it. I like the idea of it. I'm not sure what that looks like from a development standpoint. But I mean, I'm actually going to write it down and take it back to the guy I know working on it and say, hey, is this something we can look at? He's probably gonna be like, no, we just got this working, Josh. Just let this be.
And I mean, I'm assuming there's obviously a reason you all in-house the whole thing versus outsourcing it to them.
Yeah,
Because
it was actually cost savings, tremendous cost savings.
oh wow.
So it's cheaper to run these beefy VMs than to have the and I'm not sure if they were paying by or we were charged by the, I'm not, I don't know what the pricing structure was around
Yeah.
that. But I do know that it was cheaper.
Yeah. And I don't want to get off on that topic.
Sure.
Although if you all need a geocoding service, I have a really good friend that runs a really good one, but that's a whole other topic.
We've been happy. I say we, but the developers have been happy with the Smarty Streets so far. One of the things that they said they really like about it is the documentation and the support has been like phenomenal. But one of the methods that we take to, like, it's difficult with all the new Azure technology that comes out, and we always have the legacy stuff, right? We have the old legacy apps that are very large and they're on servers, and it's really hard to get rid of that stuff. So how do you start playing with some of those newer technologies with and get people on board with that, right? It's hard to get people to support it as well, while you're still working with some of that legacy technology. What we do is when there's a new project, like the geocoding, for example, we'll carve out extra time to try out a new solution. So we could have very easily just took that, built it on 4 Linux VMs, and just called it a day, and probably spent less than 8 hours doing everything and testing. And obviously that's aggressive, but we're good at building servers. I think we all are. And Josh spent a lot of time, and I helped here and there, trying to get this working in different containers. And we didn't get it completely working in the container because of the size restriction. We got a lot of people on board with it, and other apps started to get containerized because we already went through some of the pains. And as other people were getting stuck, Josh could jump in and actually explain some of that stuff. And that's how we've deployed a lot of the technologies. That's how we introduced the app gateways. So we acquired an application. Let's put the app gateways in front of it right from day one, show the advantages. And then, within the next 6 months, we had everything else behind it. And that's really how we gain support and how we introduce new technologies, is by taking those projects, making sure there's some buffer for new technology work, and then trying it with the new technology. And most of the time we end up launching with that new technology, and might be some bumps, but ultimately it works out.
So one other question I had, you guys talked about that it was designed kind of stateless. Is there a path to make it stateful, right? Like you mentioned, could you have a storage account that backs the whole scale set, and so when it came up, it would be able to use the state from the previous one?
Yeah, so that's more on the data that the VM or the instance, if you want to call it that, has. It's not the whole drive. It's like just in this particular case, it was just the geocoding data. So instead of having that, like, I don't know, 20-ish gigs or more of data, we could just use a storage account that would start the instances up faster. And then they would actually just be linking to that storage account. So it's not all of the whole OS,
Gotcha.
just that data part, right?
Yeah, but you probably got to balance that out with that your speed might be a little slower.
It might,
having to fetch it off the storage account versus it being internal to the VM.
right, and it's in refreshing it is literally running a single command once every 90 days. So I could probably orchestrate that somehow. But yeah.
Gotcha. And is there any, when you were showing earlier, it being going to being unhealthy and turning the other one on, what happens to requests during that time? Do you have like you would with AKS, do you have like a minimum? There always has to be one available and running to receive requests, and then if
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, you can absolutely set a minimum. So in our particular situation, we're licensed for 4 instances. So we set that as our max. We set our minimum down to 2. But then during the day, we allow it to fluctuate from 2 to 4 based on demand. And then we also have an additional policy that says during these times scale down to, and actually it may just be a single, I have to double check. It may be a single one because we're not as worried about high availability in the evening, non-peak hours when we don't expect anybody to be on. But yeah, you can scale it down. And then once that policy runs off, it's going to look and it's going to say, oh, the default, in the minimum is 2, and it'll bump you back up.
Get you. That's helpful.
Okay, does anybody else have any additional questions for our presenters?
Yeah, feel free to, we try and give back. Josh and I, and Josh will tell you as well that we don't have all the answers. And I think that's why we do a good job of learning new things. It's because we go in there just with an open mind. And I'm sure you guys have a ton of knowledge that we don't know. So we'd love to connect with you guys on LinkedIn.
Yeah, please.
Different problems. We'll actually search our network and type in Azure and who can we ping that might know this weird issue. And we probably give back way more than we actually request. And that's not a brag by any means. It's we've been stuck in our careers trying to learn different things or just didn't have the support. So we try and give back and help other people in that way. So if you want to connect with us on LinkedIn, if you're messing with this technology and you have a quick question or want to get on the phone for 10 minutes, just ping Josh, ping me, and we'll try and find some time that we can hang out. If you want to just hang out where we're talking about technology and stuff, sign up for the Hello World Tech. Like, you don't have to just be a mentor. We have a Discord where most of us hang out in, and we do game nights once in a while, but people post different articles and ask for help. And it's a very vulnerable type atmosphere where people can just talk about the stuff that adults know. And usually there's tons of people that jump in and try and help out. So yeah, looking forward to connecting with you guys.
Appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, thanks for y'all's time.
Yeah, thanks for showing up and listening to us.
Anybody else want to say something or ask a question or?
One more thing. I said this last time I presented, like almost a year ago, but I don't think Bill gets enough credit for how much effort he puts into maintaining the Azure user group as a group that we try to maintain. It's a ton of work. It's not all at once, but it's a lot that you have to chisel away from. So if you ever get the opportunity, shoot them an email and just say, way to go, Bill. Thanks for doing this. This group is probably alive because of how much effort Bill puts into it.
Thanks a lot, John. I really appreciate the feedback.
Hey, man.
Yeah, totally true.
You
In
do
the last 2 years, so many groups have kind of gone dark, and so
Yeah,
Mhm.
we're going on,
great
we're going on 9 years now. We've been around for a while.
Yeah, it's impressive. I mean, you're
That's
right.
awesome.
You're right, Ed. Like, there's so many groups that just disappear.
And like I say, if you want to present something, or you know someone who wants to present, or you're interested in a specific topic, my feeling is the people who show up for meetings get preference in terms of things like topics. So just let us know what, you know, if you're interested in more containers, more development topics, infrastructure topics, just let us know. We'll be able to do something.
Well, thanks, everybody.
thank you.
Okay, we'll see you all next month. All right.
Good
Have
job,
a good
Josh.
evening.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks, John.